On Story is brought to you in part by the Alice Clayburgh Reynolds Foundation, a Texas family providing innovative funding since 1979. On Story, presented by Austin Film Festival, a look inside the creative process from today's leading writers and filmmakers. This week's On Story, Real Women Have Curves and Ugly Betty actress, America Ferrera.
I think that in this industry, no matter what role you're playing, actor, producer, director, writer, you need to constantly be sharpening your tools and finding ways to stay on top of yourself creatively and not let yourself get creatively lazy. So for me, my education as an actor has come sort of trial by fire, being thrown in there and finding ways and tools that could help me get through it.
In this episode, America Ferrera discusses her path from unlikely acting upstart to network television star.
I understood that I enjoyed acting, performing by the time I was about 8 years old. I'm the youngest of 6 children. My mother was a single mother, so we were financially strapped and a very, kind of as far away from what, I lived in Los Angeles, but 30 miles outside of LA proper, and ideologically as far away from Hollywood as I possibly could be. But I grew up acting in theater, in school, in community theater, and that's just, I just did it everywhere and anywhere I could. My very first role, I tagged along with my sisters to their auditions for Romeo and Juliet at the junior high, and they're not actors. They just wanted to be around cute boys, which they later found out were all gay, because who else is auditioning for Romeo and Juliet? I tagged along when I was in 3rd grade, and they were in junior high, and they were like, fine, but don't say anything, and sit in the back. And then I found my way to the director, Mr. Protho, and asked if I could audition, and he handed me an audition sheet. And I got up on stage, and I was in 3rd grade, reading Shakespeare for the first time, so I couldn't have been anything short of awful. And he cast me as the apothecary in Romeo and Juliet. So I think it was like the sight gag. He liked seeing like a 3rd grader this tall, as the apothecary. And I loved it. I really, really, really can remember the feeling of being on stage for the first time and just feeling like, I love this. Professionally, I was in high school in my drama class, and a woman came and she said that there would be a workshop where she'd teach you how to audition for commercials, and at the end there would be a showcase, and there would be agents there. And at the end of it, I got signed with a tiny agency called Bobby Ball Agency. It was with them that I found my first job, which was a Disney Channel movie called Gotta Kick It Up. I was 17, and it was a dance movie, and it was like the best first job ever. HBO came around. They were making Real Women Have Curves, and they needed a 17-year-old Mexican-American, very particular type of person, and it wasn't something that was, abundantly found in Hollywood. So luckily with Real Women Have Curves, I had just finished Gotta Kick It Up, and I finally had enough money to go to drama camp, which was my biggest dream ever, was to go to drama camp. So I went to drama camp at Northwestern University, and I was there, and 3 weeks in, my manager calls me, the woman who taught the commercial workshop, all of a sudden became a manager. She calls me and she says, they're auditioning for this HBO movie. They want to see you. Will you come back? And I was like, no, I'm at drama camp. I waited my whole life to be at drama camp. So she was really mad at me. And she's like, fine, well, they said that if they haven't found her by the time, you're done with drama camp, they'll see you, but they might find someone. I was like, okay, that's fine. So I just finished drama camp, and I went back, and they hadn't found someone. And they called me in. I think I auditioned 5 different times for the role. And they were auditioning other girls, like doing a bunch of chemistry reads. So it was a long audition process. And then finally I got it. And we shot that in September 2001. Actually, our very first day of rehearsal was on September 11th, 2001. And then by January of 2002, we were premiering at the Sundance Film Festival. And the film was very well received. And that's really what opened up all the doors for me in my career. Not all the doors, but some doors.
Mira tu pastelote.
Pastel, ay, señor. ¿Pero qué no la ve que está más grandota que el pastel? Why did you quit your job?
Why do you know about this?
I just know.
Okay, Mom, I quit my job.
Why?
Because I didn't get along with the manager.
So what?
Anna, you're just gonna have to get another job.
I know, Papa, okay? It's just something I had to do.
Tomorrow you come to work with us in the factory.
What? No way.
It's funny to me because I always say, and I mean this, I never realized how Latina I was until I started acting, so I started auditioning. One of my very first auditions was for like a cable commercial, and I went in and I did the audition, and then they're like, could you sound more Latina? I was just like, what are you talking about? Like, do you want me to speak in Spanish? They're like, could you do it with like an accent? I was like, but I don't know. Like, this is how I talk. I don't know what you're talking about. And so they wanted me to speak in broken English, basically, at 16. And I was so really confused by that. And I thought, but I'm Latina, and this is how I talk, so why is this a problem? Why can't I just talk the way I talk? Why do you need me to sound like I don't understand English? So it was a big process, really figuring out, I had always seen myself in a certain way, but then learning what other people saw when I walked into the room. And then ultimately, really just basically not giving a shit what people saw when I walked into the room. But with Real Women Have Curves, when I read that script, the mother-daughter relationship really resounded with me, especially the stuff around, body image and weight.
Ni te hagas las ilusiones. You'll never fit into that one. It's a size 7.
Why do you always have to be like this?
I only tell you for your own good. Ve nomás. Enormes.
Don't.
They must weigh
Stop
10
it.
kilos each.
Mom, what do you think you're doing?
Ay, ¿cómo serás exagerada?
So it just felt really natural to me. I had no idea at that point how it would connect to audiences. And what was so exciting about that movie when it came out was that we traveled the world with that film. We went to film festivals everywhere, and everywhere we went, no matter, race, gender, age, people were saying about my character, who is a 16-year-old Mexican-American girl, that's me, that's me, that's me. I had 50-year-old white men coming up to me and saying, that's me, like crying after so it was really a lesson in how, for me, the more specific a story is, the more universal it can actually be, and realizing that's what people were connecting to, that they could connect to me not just by what I looked like, but what the human experience was. A year before Betty actually came around, I'd heard about it. My agent had told me about it. She said, Salma Hayek's producing the show. It's based on this TV show that was in Colombia. I'd never heard of it. I was like, okay. And then a few months later, ran into Salma Hayek at a hotel in Los Angeles, and she was leaving, and I was coming in, and she stops and just in the middle of the lobby pitches the show to me. And I hadn't heard of Betty La Fea, and I hadn't even read the script, but just from her explanation of who this character was, this smart, driven, kind, hardworking woman enters this backstabbing, as superficial world as she possibly can, and yet she stays above it all.
Are you trying to suffocate us with that putrid smell?
Oh, they're empanadas.
They're disgusting.
Oh my God. There's nothing here except non-caloric space food, and I am starving. Can I have one of those, please?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Oh, wow. You know, I might as well eat the whole thing because they're gonna make me look like Nicole Richie anyway. So, what do you guys think of the latest Jenna Fletcher movie? And you can be honest, because I'm not one of those actresses with some huge ego.
Oh, it's really good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. So how do you guys put up with working here?
And I really, really didn't ever think I was going to do television. I didn't want it to interrupt like my education, and I was young. I was like, I don't want to settle down, and I want to travel. I don't want to do TV. I want to do film. And I had turned down pilot offers before because I just thought TV is not what I want to do. But when I heard that explanation, that setup, I don't know, in me something switched, and I thought, I wish I had that TV show to watch when I was a kid. Like, I would have run home to watch that show. And it sounded like nothing that was on TV. And they didn't offer me the role. So I went in and did a camera test, and I really just had that attitude of like, I mean, they have two choices. They can cast me and have a show, or they cannot cast me and do it wrong. Like, that was really my attitude. And that's sort of how I felt about Real Women Have Curves, too. I mean, I know it sounds really arrogant, but saying it out loud, but I realized that the things that I've done and that I've had so much pride in and have sort of become what I imagined them to be in my mind were the things that from the very first moment I knew it was right. I knew that I was the person to step into that part. And I walked into those auditions without apology. It's the roles that I know on instinct I'm meant to do that. And I know that I have what it takes. And that's what it felt like with Ugly Betty. So I went in and I did my screen test, and then they offered it to me. Well, my understanding is that they actually didn't want to keep Betty Latina when they first started developing it. The feedback was, yes, but we don't want to keep her Latina. We want to make her Caucasian, because that's what will resonate with Americans. And then I think, it took on all different forms. And when they finally brought Salma Hayek on to produce, it was with the intent of keeping it true to its roots and making it an American story, but keeping it true to like Betty being rooted in Latin culture.
What are you doing?
I'm making the buñuelos.
Will you stop with those things? Leah stole our money. We can't even go to the police because we can't tell them that's illegal.
It's still Thanksgiving, Hilda, and we're still a family, and I'm making Mom's dessert.
For myself, I really felt like what allowed that show to kind of be sort of a crossover success, appeal to Latino and non-Latino audiences, was that, yes, Betty was Latino, but that is very rarely what the show was about. The show was about her struggle as a human being, trying to keep her dignity in this environment. And I think that not focusing and labeling her struggle as a Latino struggle did more for Latinos in Hollywood than if we would have focused on it. Because we begin to just accept her and her family for what we really are in society, which is, Latino Americans, we're American. I know I am. I identify as American before I identify as anything else. And I just happen to be Latino. And like I said, had my own struggle trying to figure out what does that mean, Latino, because I considered myself American first. And so I personally thought it was one of the strong suits of how race was dealt with on that show was, yes, we talked about things like immigration, and there was one episode that was about sort of affirmative action and Betty getting accepted into this program and feeling really weird about it because she felt like she only got accepted because she was Latina and not because of her talents.
You really think that what you did in 2 days is better than what I spent 3 months working on? You really gonna make me say it?
Say what?
You help them meet their quota.
What are you talking about?
I mean, they picked you, Betty Suarez of Queens. because you're Latina. You're the token ethnic girl.
What? What? They picked me. That doesn't even... Wow, Mark. You have said a lot of really ugly things to me in the past, but that is by far and away the ugliest.
Oh, I'm sorry, Betty. It may be ugly, but it's the truth.
So we dealt with it here and there, but that's not what the character's main journey and main struggle was about. Well, I think that the character of Betty, she's just a representative of the underdog, you know, the person who is incredibly unlikely to succeed from the outside and finds a way to do that, and not by compromising who she is at her core. And I believe, I mean, I don't know that all of that is part of the American dream as we know it, but I know that I, being who I am, wanting to succeed in an industry that nobody, friends, families, teachers, really ever imagined that I could, I related to her on an incredibly personal level. It was a struggle sometimes to fight for the character's growth when you're doing network TV and you have network executives and creatives who sort of are afraid to lose an audience. You know, it's because I had so much faith in the character and faith that the audience understood what I was doing with the character and who this character was. I thought, we can have Betty do something that's not morally right, and we're not gonna lose, they're not gonna all just tune out. We can make her more complex, we can make her more interesting, we can ask her to do the wrong thing and then talk about that and not have to have her just be a saint because that's the only way people will watch.
Not seeing the book in your hands. Why is that?
Because Gina Gambaro has it.
Gambaro. Is that a new designer? Or?
No, it's an old slut. She broke into my house and she took it and now she's holding it ransom.
Wait, you told me you had the book. You said you were looking at it.
Yeah, I lied. Or I twisted the truth to try to buy some time and fix it.
Betty, you don't lie to me, ever. We're on the same team. I mean, we cannot afford to have those unretouched Natalie proofs out there in any way, shape, or form, and I cannot tell you how royally screwed she and this entire magazine could be.
What? Because there's pictures of what she actually looks like?
Exactly.
I did feel like there were times where I was in those conversations with the team, just about how far we could push the envelope and how far we could go, and to trust that our audience was gonna stay in it with us. What I've learned from the producing role, the creative producing role, is you have to support and stick to one person's vision. You know, and I think I learned that in TV as well. I mean, with Ugly Betty, I learned that a show, the longevity of a show and a show making sense in the long run and keeping an audience and staying true to what it is, even when it is growing and changing, really has to be based on a very strong backbone, a very strong vision. You know, I think you look at what's on TV and what works and what's making sense, and you look at what cable's doing, and they're investing in creators, the creative people behind the vision. And I think this TV by committee or filmmaking by committee can get really messy. And for me, in across mediums, and even in theater, you want the one person whose vision it is, and then you want the people surrounding that person to protect the integrity of that vision. The foundation for the work that I have done as a producer came from that show. I learned so much being on television, and there is so much to learn working in TV because it's so immediate. You're having kind of an immediate conversation with your work all the time. You do it, you see it, you go back to the drawing board. You do it, you see it, you go back to the drawing board, and you're having these conversations with your creative team all the time, and getting, now more than ever, to get responses, not just from yourself and your creative team, but from your audience. And so 4 years of that was just boot camp. You know, like it was like a boot camp producing workshop. And I was never a producer in an official capacity on the show, but I was very deeply involved in the way that the show developed, the way the stories rolled out, where that character went, where that character ended. And, you know, I was in the writing room probably a lot more than the writers wanted me in the writing room. I want to read a script and find a character that that is weird and confusing and flawed and is as specific to the person writing that character as possible, that I don't need to know why that character just went from what I thought was that to that. But if I know that the writer knows why that character went from that to that, then I want to find out, you know? And I would also say, like, don't be afraid to, you know, if you're writing a character that you don't understand, you know, if you don't know what the experience is like to be, you know, a 17-year-old Mexican-American girl who's pregnant at 17, then find out. You know, don't guess, I guess. Like, go find out by seeking those people out or trying to understand what the honest experience of that is. Because I've gotten scripts that I have felt were so authentic and so strongly written that this must be this person's experience, to come to find out that it's not in any way the experience of the writer, but they found a way to really insert themselves in that world and have it come through their lens, even if it wasn't their firsthand experience. The Dry Land that Ryan wrote and directed, you know, that centers around a soldier who comes from the war in Iraq and tries to reintegrate into his life with the symptoms of PTSD.
She been treating you all right?
Just get the hell out of here, Marco.
Sorry.
Yeah, look right.
It's okay, baby. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's gonna sting a little bit. James! James, it's me! James! James, it's me!
What are you doing? Hey, what are you doing?
James!
Sarah, get out of here.
James!
Sarah, get out of here. Come on, come on.
Because Ryan Piers Williams is my husband. He wrote that in our home. So I was reading every draft, you know, scene by, you know, as the scenes were being done, I was reading them and giving him thoughts creatively from the very beginning. And I never in a way of, oh, I'm going to go on to produce this, just as a sounding board. And then when the script came together, which I think he sat and wrote it for about a year, even though it was many years in the researching process before he sat down to write it. I'd been through all those stages with him. You know, I really realized that it was a really exciting role to be in, to really get to be the sort of mirror for the visionary. You know, film is a director's medium, and to help him come to his vision by being the person who reminds him what that vision was back a year ago when we were talking. You know, I think as filmmakers, there are a lot of compromises that have to be made to get your movie done. And I think it's incredibly important to be surrounded by one or two people who can, yes, help you make those compromises, but also not let you get off track with what you originally started out to do. And so for me, it was fun to get to be that part for him, all the way from writing it to financing it to casting it to shooting it to editing it and then marketing it and then traveling the country and other parts of the world with the film. When you're there for every step of the process, you get to kind of be at one of the linchpins of what the director's vision of it is. And that was a really exciting process for me, and I loved being a producer, and so I continued to find ways to be that person in that role. Honestly, I feel like my only hope is that, you know, that I can give a performance that someone else can connect to on a human level, no matter if you're a man or a woman, or if you're young or old, or what your racial or your religious or your, you know, political backgrounds are. I believe that what we do as storytellers is we bring each other closer. I think that that's what storytelling is about. It's about making this big world with so many labels and boxes and differences, and doing away with those by sharing what is common, what is human, what does bring us together and make us the same.
You've been watching A Conversation with America Ferrera on Story. On Story is part of a growing number of programs in Austin Film Festival's On Story project, including the On Story PBS series, now streaming online, the On Story radio program and podcast in collaboration with Public Radio International, and the On Story book series available on Amazon. To find out more about On Story and Austin Film Festival, visit onstory.tv or austinfilmfestival.com.